Well, no one expected this. Everyone was saying Gen 5, Unova confirmed, either as a remake or Legends title. Yes, we did get a Legends title, but they skipped Gen 5 and went straight to Gen 6. And not only that, it is the missing game of that generation, Z to A. And it could take place during the Belle Epoque, when Haussmann redeveloped Paris with its grand boulevards and beautiful avenues, the Paris we know today, which was crowned, of course, with the construction of the Eiffel Tower, Lumière's Tower, as Lumière City is, of course, based on the Eiffel Tower. And both of those initiatives are from the 19th century. But what is more interesting about this game, and which ties also to the Switch 2, is the simultaneous release of this game in 2025, meaning that there are no Pokemon games for the Nintendo Switch coming out in 2024, breaking the streak of expansions, releases of mainline Pokemon games and so on whatsoever that we have had since 2017, or more precisely 2018, because the Pokemon Company likes to not risk too much on hardware that hasn't proven itself yet. Well, what does this mean for Pokemon on the Nintendo Switch 2? Well, number one, if there's backwards compatibility, that, Pokemon Legends Z to A is going to be on the Nintendo Switch 2, pretty much as a dual launch title. But what if, and I'm saying what if, there are two versions of this game, one for the Nintendo Switch and one graphically and performance-wise far more superior, upscaled 4K version for the Nintendo Switch 2, launching around the same time or just slightly after, because the reports point to March 2025. This game, much like Legends Arceus in 2022, could be in January, either as a swan song of the Nintendo Switch or as a dual release and the big game that can sell immediately on the new system, along with, say, a Mario Kart or a 3D Mario. And this is only the beginning when it comes to Nintendo Switch 2 Pokemon games. Because guess what? We only got one remake this generation, being Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. I don't mean by generation, I mean by the entire system. We've got one remake. And Gen 5 was surprisingly skipped in this situation, meaning that Gen 5 remake might be coming for the Nintendo Switch 2 now instead. Say, I don't know, in 2028, maybe even 2029, if of course we get DLC for Gen 10, which I have an entire introduction of with Rogersbase that was recorded back in November 2023, and I'm gonna be honest, it was pretty on the money when it came to a Legends title in 2025. Because what this points to is that we either get a new generation in 2025 for the Switch 2, or they're waiting for the 30th anniversary of Pokemon in 2026. And that is what creates a very interesting time frame here, because it seems like Let's Go has been written off, and it also points that Gen 10 might very well be in Japan, a return back to where it all started. But to give you a better insight into it, here is Rogersbase, and here's the big Pokemon game that will probably launch exclusively for the Nintendo Switch 2. Because remakes, Pokemon Snap and everything else, well, those are peanuts compared to Gen 10. We have that big anniversary and Gen 10. Another 10, man. Another 10.
Yeah, a lot of 10s.
And here's one thing I need to bring up before I give you the word. 2026 marks the 30th anniversary of Pokemon. Isn't it the perfect time for Gen 10? Just take that one extra year to make something truly spectacular for probably the most important generation in a long, long time for Pokemon.
I agree. And I think if you look at Pokemon's release schedule, I think if you look at the feedback too from Scarlet and Violet, even if you look at the feedback of like Teal Mask, right? Like when the DLC came out for Sword and Shield, everybody was talking about the DLC, everybody was playing it, and I feel like the reaction to Teal Mask has been kind of tepid. And I think the fact that they're pushing out the second DLC pack in December of this year kind of says to me they want to be done with this and move on to whatever the next project is. I don't think there's a mainline Pokemon game next year. I will say that. I think we are going to get a bunch of cool side games maybe. I don't think there's going to be a remake, re-release, anything like that next year. But I agree with you. I think 2026 is going to be Gen 10. I don't think we're getting Gen 10 until then. which I know seems like quite a bit of a gap, but really that's 4 years in between when we got Scarlet and Violet and then when we get the next one. So to me, the timeline at least lines up pretty well. And then they can have a little bit extra development time, maybe learn from their mistakes with what happened with the Switch, where they had 2 full generations, plus they had the Go games, plus they had Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, plus Legends. And while that obviously did well for them, it came at the cost of, I think, issues with the development and with critical reception and with fan reception of those games. I also think they are planning something massive for whatever Gen 10 is going to be. Like something really, 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 really special that's going to not only touch on the nostalgia that people have from the very beginning of when Pokemon first got released, but really turning the franchise on its head. I think we're going to see something really special there. As for... Oh, go ahead.
Personally, I think we're going back to Japan with Pokemon Gen 10.
I agree with you.
Open world Japan game is my bet for this game.
I would take it one step further. And I know people aren't going to like this, but I don't care. Gen 1 will always be where Pokemon started. It will always be the preferred generation. It's still the one that Nintendo has the rights to the original 151, right? It's still like the baby of all of Pokemon Company. I think if they really wanted to do something bold, they go all out. They have an open world Japan game, and they do convergence of every single Pokemon of the original 151. Every one of them. Completely redo the Pokedex, basically remix Kanto, totally different gym leader types, totally different Pokemon, and I think you get like the standard fire type, water type, grass type, but instead of being Charmander, fire, Bulbasaur, grass, Squirtle, water, you get like water Bulbasaur, grass Charmander, fire Squirtle. And build upon that with the idea of the convergent Pokemon that they've already sort of put in place. And then that way, too, you're sort of touching on the nostalgia that people have for those original Pokemon. They obviously still will harken back to the look of those original Pokemon, but that every single one of those Pokemon, it would almost be like a reboot, right? Which is kind of what they tried doing for Black and White, but I think the difference with Black and White was that people did not have the recognition for any of those Pokemon because it was a totally clean slate. Whereas if they're convergence, right, people will still look at the Pokemon that are these new convergent Pokemon and think to, oh, I remember that's clearly this version of Electabuzz or this version of, whatever they named the original Gen 1 Pokemon there, but that the game could be completely different.
Yeah, so a little bit like Breath of the Wild, what Breath of the Wild was to the Zelda franchise. Familiar, but very different at the same time. Yeah. A known location, a location we know, a return to Kanto, and if we're returning to Kanto with Gen 10...
Dude, Gen 5 HD 2D would be immaculate. I think that is the generation, if they were ever going to go back to sprites and have the look that obviously Octopath and Triangle Strategy have really perfected, and that people clearly love, those games sell well. If they were ever going to do that, I think Gen 5 would be the perfect opportunity to do it.
I don't think they will ever try to do anything they did like in the 25th anniversary of Pokemon, but that was the 25th anniversary, and that's why they just went all in with it. I think we're going to see more like, this year we're doing this one, this year we're doing this one, and we're doing it properly. We're not rushing it in any shape or form. We're not going to have another Scarlet and Violet situation at launch again. And I think they know that not all PR is good PR. Not only Game Freak, but also the Pokemon Company.
Yeah, at this point especially.
Alright, that along with, Gen 5 remakes, ultimately in 4K, or upscaled 4K in, who knows, 2020X, and possibly some other surprise Pokemon reveals for the Nintendo Switch 2, is what we can probably expect in the second half of the decade of the Nintendo Switch 2. What do you think are the prospects of Pokemon and the games on Nintendo's upcoming system? Sound off in the comment section down below. If you haven't already, then be sure to leave a like, subscribe and press the notification bell to not miss any of our upcoming videos, whether that being Pokemon Legends Set to A, Pokemon, and Nintendo Switch 2. Last but not least, a big thanks to you for watching and to all our patreon.com/CommonRealm patrons. Special shoutouts goes to our Patreon for all producers and heroes. You all rock, and please enjoy one or both of these two awesome videos.